All right, welcome everybody to the Stormbirds Podcast. This is episode 5, and today I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Sérgio Costa from helisimmer.com. Sérgio, did I say that right? Did I have your name right?
Yes, you just said it, well, not exactly perfectly, but very well. Thank you. Yeah, it was awesome. One of the best times I've heard someone that it's not Portuguese or speaks Portuguese saying my name. It was just brilliant. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, hey. Well, I try and do my best. So, Sérgio, you've been a flight sim enthusiast for about 25 years, according to your bio. And for the last 5 years, or just over 5 years, you've been running helisimmer.com. And you're also one of a trio of folks that does the Three Grumpy Simmers, which is a YouTube series and podcast. Sérgio, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and hello everyone. Enjoy the show, because I think we are going to have some really cool things. Just a small note: helisimmer.com has been on for 6 years now. It's our 6th anniversary this month.
6?
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah, 6 years already.
Yeah.
I'm getting old.
It's hard to believe. So Sérgio, I always like to do this with guests. I want to go back to your first flight sim or flight sims. So, what was your first flight sim, and then maybe some of the highlights that you've experienced over 25 years of flight simming?
Yeah, well, I started with I think it was Microsoft Flight Simulator 4 or 5 or something like that. I don't actually remember. I didn't even have a computer back then, so I used to play it on the computer of a friend. He didn't like Sims, and well, he actually didn't like computers that much. His father got a computer, and I just, whenever I went to his place, the guy was just doing general stuff or just falling asleep or stuff like that, or studying, and I was all over his computer learning that things, and I've always loved computers, but I couldn't afford one. So when his father got one, I was very thrilled, and I was the one that supplied him with any games that came out, and Microsoft Flight Simulator was one of them, and it was the first contact that I have with a sim. Well, perhaps not the first contact. I have had contact before at a friend's house. I don't even remember the name, but it was more of a game, not so much of a sim. The actual first attempt of a sim that I played was Microsoft Flight Simulator 4. I think it was 4, and it was a blast on a 386 or something like that. really, really basic and expensive and rudimentary computer, but it was amazing. Throughout the 25 plus years of simming, my highlights. So man, it's been a trip. It's been quite a journey, and it's hard to pick some highlights. It's 25 years of simming, right? So there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There's a reason why I continue to sim after 25 years. So it's not just one or two or three things. But there are some things that I remember since I started simming. The first time the first versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator that were a bit more serious or different, especially Microsoft Flight Simulator 98 and stuff like that. My first set of rudder pedals, my first HOTAS, which was the SADEC X45, which SADEC was meanwhile acquired by Logitech. So there's a few highlights here and there. And of course, the biggest highlight, the thing that actually changed the way I sim, was helicopters when they came out in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I got tired of airliners pretty quickly, to be honest. I'm not saying this to insult anyone, but airliners became very boring for me after not too much really.
Sure.
So I was always more of a GA guy, small aircraft, just fly it by hand instead of autopilot and stuff like that. But eventually I started looking at helicopters and I thought, well, what not? Why not? And that was the time where everything changed. That's the biggest highlight of my career as a simmer. And since then, I've been playing helicopters pretty much all my time. So 99% of my simming is spent inside a virtual helicopter.
Amazing. So they really captured your interest then.
Oh, completely, yeah, completely. And why shouldn't it's a completely different it's a completely different set of challenges and things you can do with a helicopter. It's not it's hard. Helicopters may seem boring, and I thought they were boring when I started using sims and flying the big jets and then flying fighter jets and other types of aircraft. I also found them boring because they were slow and they fly low and whatnot. But that was actually what ended up making them very interesting for me and starting to fly them.
So you started helisimmer.com 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? What's the story behind that? There's always a story.
Yeah. There's the short story and there's the long story. So I'm telling you this because the long story can be a bit long. Do you want to hear the short story or the long story?
Oh, well, I think we're here for the long story for this one. So yeah, fire away.
Okay, cool. Well, I've always, I don't know if you are aware, probably are, because this is something that I say a lot in my videos and my articles. I'm a developer. I'm a programmer. I'm a software developer. So I've been developing software for over 20 years as a profession. That's how I make money to make a living and to put food on the table. Helisimmer.com does make some money, but it's enough to cover expenses and get software and hardware, and that's something we need to continue to produce content. So helisimmer.com is not my main thing. It's not where I make money. But like I was saying, I've been a developer since 1998 or 1999, something like that. So 23 or 24 years. And I've always liked games. I started developing software because I love games. And when the internet started to pop up and online communities started to pop up as well, I started to become very interested in those online communities. And back in 2000, something like that, 1999 or 2000, just a couple of years after I started working as a developer, there was this very cool tactical game that came out, developed by an old company called Sierra, and the game was SWAT 3. So it was the third installment of the franchise, which I knew about, but I didn't play that much back then. But SWAT 3 was really amazing. It was the kind of game that I really liked outside The Sims. And there was an online community, and I became part of that community, and I started to learn a lot about online communities. I started my own project, my own website back then, dedicated to SWAT 3. I got in touch with the developers. I got good relations with the guys inside Sierra. I became one of the official moderators for the forums. And eventually Sierra was acquired by Vivendi. So larger company, more games, other games, different community, but still with some guys that came from Sierra. And then Vivendi was merged with Activision. And by then, I eventually left the community. Meanwhile, the website, was really popular. It was one of the two major websites that was dedicated to SWAT 3. And back then, remember, this is 1999, 2000, 2001. But back then, I remember that I had about 14,000 visits every single day to the website. And that was back then, back then it was amazing. It was just crazy. But eventually, because of all that traffic, and since we also had a library where people could download mods and whatnot, things got hard for me because it was very expensive for me to get back. Remember, we're talking about very early stages, very early years in which you didn't have internet providers or services like you have today, in which you can have a website hosted. Well, I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than we had back then. I had to shut down the project. So the project pretty much died of success. That was what happened. But I was hooked about the fact that I could be in communities and managing communities. And after that, I started other small new projects for the for communities, for gaming communities. Nothing too serious, and I was pretty much interested in starting something for simulators, for flight simulators. Back in 2006 or 2007, I got to this online forum called Hover Control, which was very big. It was huge. It was the main app for helicopters, for helicopter flight simulation back then, in an era in which FSX was pretty much the king of sims back then. There was X-Plane. There was just a handful of people that played X-Plane. P3D didn't exist. There was the ESP platform, so the platform from which FSX came, but P3D didn't exist, and there were other sims out there, but they were very, very residual. I got into the community, I got into the forums. I just loved the culture and the environment, everything in it. But back then, helicopters were being covered, so I didn't feel the need to do anything regarding sims. We had very good websites dedicated to flight simulation already. And it was the kind of games, the kind of communities that I wanted to be part of. So I didn't want to start any other kind of website dedicated to other games. Hover Control, meanwhile, disappeared a few years ago. There were some issues. I think that the guy behind it, Jordan Moore, also had some complications. I really don't know. I don't remember, and I never knew a lot, but I don't remember exactly what happened. But Jordan eventually shut down Hover Control. There were a few attempts to revive it, but Hover Control just disappeared after a few years. And there was this niche, because I knew helicopters were a niche. They always were a niche, even in real life. Helicopters are a niche. You don't have a lot of people flying helicopters in real life, and it's the same with sims. Sure. There was a gap that needed to be filled, and I knew that just like me, there were other guys out there that like the helicopters. And I knew there were, because Hover Control back then had I think it was something like 20,000 members. It was really a huge community, very big community. Yeah. So I knew there was a gap that needed to be filled. And I actually spent some years thinking and growing this idea of releasing a website in my head. But there were so many new medias coming out, and YouTube was already out there. People were starting to make podcasts. Even before I started the website, I launched a PDF magazine called Rotor Wash Magazine, which we only released a couple of issues. People could download it for free. But even with that format and not having a huge amount of time in which we built a community, we didn't even have forums or anything like that. It was just a website, and where people downloaded the PDF. But I knew that something else needed to be done. I just wasn't sure if a website would cut it. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of making a lot of content, of a lot of video content, or doing podcasts, because this thing, a lot of people don't know, but writing an article takes time and taking screenshots. By doing videos, it's just I don't even know how to say it. It's for me, it's very painful. it's really very painful. It's time consuming, very painful.
It's all time consuming, but yeah, video work can be very time consuming.
Yeah, because even it's not just the editing; it's a lot of different things. Because I don't want to do videos my videos are not professional, not by a long shot, but I want them to have at least a bit of quality, right? Sure. So I need to be careful. I try to be careful with the lighting and with the cameras I use, and with the background, with what's behind me, etc., etc. And since I don't actually have a home office or a office or something like that, I don't have a studio. I need to assemble everything and then disassemble at the end and then do the editing, etc. So I wasn't really sure if I wanted to follow those new medias that people were enjoying it. Eventually, I thought that, just screw it. I'm going to do this the way that I like to do it as well, and I like to read. I like to consume articles. I like to read articles. Videos are, I do watch videos, of course, but it's not my main thing. I rather just pick up the phone and read an article rather than being with a headset or phones or whatever on in the store and listening to it. So I started Helisimmer. After a few months of developing the idea, I actually a few years of developing the idea, and after a few months of actually developing something in back then, the website started in WordPress because I didn't want to spend a lot of time to get it to get it out there. So the time to market had to be really short. And I wanted to gauge the interest of people. I wanted to make sure that people were interested in what we were saying and what we wanted to do about helicopters. And that's it. That's pretty much it. We started a project. We started to grow. We got ourselves into social media, of course, with Facebook and Twitter, and eventually YouTube with the weekly flyby and some other videos that we do. And things have been growing since then. We have redone the website, the new website. Well, it's not new, but it was launched 2 years after the initial release. Was completely developed by me, so that I could remove all the bloat, all of the stuff that we didn't need, plugins and whatnot. And we have been growing ever since, and it's been a very fun and very interesting ride. So here's you ask for the long story. Here's the long story.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. So yeah, it's interesting. I some of the parallels certainly between our stories, starting up Stormbirds and compared to your experience with Helisimmer. And yeah, I kind of just dipped my toes into the water and then kind of.
And it worked, right? It worked. It's working.
Yeah, it worked. It took a little bit of time, and then it started to grow, and then but I'm curious what your take on this, but I always felt I was I questioned myself on whether what I was doing was a good idea, because I started a blog in a time where YouTube channels are all the rage, and I seem to have found, and I think you said exactly the same thing with Helisimmer, is you've got a niche, and you've got you want to read something, and I found the same with Stormbirds, that people want to read an article, and they don't always have the they're not always in the right spot to watch a lengthy video. So I don't know, what do you think like both of us started up blogs, websites in the time of the big YouTube channel. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's exactly my initial doubt. That's what I was saying. It was hard for me to make a decision in the beginning, but I eventually just thought it was better to just do it, and people eventually will let me know if it was a good or a bad idea. I am pretty sure that I would be covering a lot more, a bigger portion of the community. I would probably be getting a bigger portion of the community and have more followers and have more people consuming the content that I am producing. And people could actually criticize me and you for not doing that, because we are doing this for, you probably are doing this for the same reason that I am. We're not doing this to get richer or to get rich at all, because we know how much money this gives us, right? It's yeah, you're not, very hardly you're going to make a living out of this, especially in a market niche such as flight simulation, which is a niche by itself.
That's so right.
You're not getting richer. You're not getting a lot of money. We're doing this out of passion, and I've not been criticized, but I have had people asking me, why don't I get into those new medias, especially YouTube, because I will probably be serving or providing this service to a lot more people. And the truth is that, exactly like I said at the beginning, it's so time consuming, and it's so hard for me, especially for me, because like I said, I don't have a dedicated place where I can actually do the videos. I would eventually not do a good service, because the amount of information and the amount of content that I would create would be a lot more reduced, because everything that you do on video, like you said, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of time. I can probably write an article and take screenshots and get it on the website, depending on the day, but I can probably do it in 1 hour. It is not possible to do a video in 1 hour with the same content that I put into an article and have it out there. And you eventually grow tired of it and you just burn out.
For sure.
So it's not, I think that on one hand, we may be losing for not being on those mediums. But on the other hand, I think that that's what is helping us to actually do this on the long run. Because I would rather, I don't know about you, but I would rather be able to write an article or a news story every day if I need to, than to just do a weekly video with recaps, which I also do, mind you. So it's people can criticize me because I'm talking against something that I do, but I do those weekly videos not to provide timely content to people that are watching the videos, but more of a way of raising awareness to the content on the website and getting people to know that if they want to get news faster as they go, they should probably follow us on Twitter, for example, and check out the website every now and then, because that's where the content is when it happens. And it's a lot easier to do it by writing an article than doing it on video. That's at least my opinion. You probably, I don't know, you probably have the same opinion, since you are pretty much doing the same thing, which is writing articles. What's your take on it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, my take is very similar. I could almost just say copy paste and it would be the same. I started the Stormbirds in part because I wanted to get faster at my writing. You know, I could write and I have had things published in other mediums and other places, but it always took me a long time to get something together. So my goal was really a professional one, which was to improve the speed of my writing. So coming back to what you're saying, yeah, being able to, hop into the sim, grab some screenshots, come up with my thoughts, get an article out. Yeah, sometimes an hour or less. In some cases I can do 2 or 3 or 4 articles if they're shorter, news items or something like that in an hour. So yeah, it was all about kind of speed and then balance versus, my other hobbies and obligations in life and that kind of thing. So it's your story, I think, is similar to mine.
Yeah. People have no idea how long we take to do a video.
It's time consuming.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. So you've built up kind of a little mini empire around helisimmer.com. You have Facebook and Twitter and Discord group and YouTube channel. Is there anything else that I've missed? And then which of those do you think complements the website the most, or do they all just kind of feed in organically?
Yeah. We also have a forum. The website is the main thing, and everything else that I built around was just to serve the community as well. I didn't even want to start a Discord server, but some members asked for it, and there it is. There's not a lot of people there, but it exists for those that want to use it. And I'm there. I'm not always there, but I'm there as much as I can to try and help people that have some questions and doubts, and people can use it for communicating even by voice if they want to, if they so wish to. The forums was my idea. I wanted to have somewhere where we could provide other kind of information, or to provide a place where people could post their own stuff in a different way than Facebook. Facebook is really nice and Facebook groups work very well. But I find that you tend to lose information. It's not the same as having a forum system in which you can search on the forum and have different topics and threads and look for the information there. I also wanted to have it there so that developers that do not have a platform to provide support to people using their products, be it payware or freeware, could have their own forums, their own support forums. And we have a few developers that have the support forums there for them to use and for people to ask their questions and get answers about any issues that they may find. It's pretty much everything that I have done around the website is pretty much to either serve the community or serve the website itself. Just like the weekly flyby videos that I was mentioning before, the YouTube channel acts as a way to people find content that they may find interesting on YouTube, but eventually come to the website and get to know the website and the community. I think the two biggest strong points for that Helisimmer has, besides the website, of course, which is where people find the news, it's the Facebook group. More than forums, way more. People prefer Facebook, and it's a trend we have been seeing for quite some time. That's why Facebook is so important, and it has grown so much because people rather use that platform. So yeah, those are the two main things. Yeah, those are the two main things.
Yeah, I mean it's fascinating how these things come together, right?
Yeah, it is, and you eventually have to be on them to people find you. That's how we have been growing the community and how we have been having more and more people getting into the Facebook group.
Yeah, incredible. So there you have it, folks. If you're looking to get into helicopter simulation, you can always start with the Facebook group. You can start with the website itself, with the forums. There's all kinds of ways to connect. So
yeah, we have links for all the stuff, all platforms at the bottom of the website. So it's just a matter of finding the one that you like the most and just use it.
And engaging that way. Yeah, fantastic. Switching gears a little bit. 2021 for Sims is a busy year. I think I don't know if you agree with me, but I think it was a busy year, and I think we kind of hit. And you can tell me whether you agree with us or not. But I think we've hit kind of a new golden age in flight sims. What do you think about that? And what are some of your highlights from 2021?
Yeah, back in 2017 or so, I actually wrote an article mentioning that I thought that we were entering a new golden age of flight simulation, and we were, because even though FSX was no longer in the horizon, we had X-Plane coming out with new versions. We had P3D growing. Aerofly FS2 was also out there and trying new things. We started to see developers doing more and more add-ons. Not that they had stopped, and that's one of the reasons why FSX has been out there for so long, and X-Plane has been growing. Developers were active, but they became more and more active. We had Flight Sim World, FSW by Dovetail Games, that eventually was canceled. But back then we started to see some big movements from these companies that were developing flight sims. In 2019, a bombshell was dropped. The Microsoft Flight Simulator was announced, and we were shocked. I think we were just before the recording, we were talking about Flight Sim Expo, and it was at that Flight Sim Expo that we were mentioning, where we met that mutual online friend, that we first heard about Microsoft Flight Simulator. It was quite a bombshell. And from then on, things have just grown and grown and grown. And yes, 2021 was just absolutely fantastic, with lots of different things happening. The release of Microsoft Flight Simulator in 2020, and eventually starting to get, I wouldn't say a mature product, but starting to mature. X-Plane 11 growing very, very well, and eventually leading up to the news that X-Plane 12 was being developed. New technologies, VR just jumped right out of the box where it was hidden, and it's more and more and more and more dominant. Well, I wouldn't say it's dominant, but it's getting more and more people attracted to it, with different devices, great prices, or better prices. I wouldn't say great, but better prices than we had a few years ago. Great resolution. We also had bad things. We also had problems with the graphics cards, that people need to actually use those sims in VR. So that's a problem that we are still having. But yeah, there was a lot of exciting things. The highlight for me for 2021, um, well, it was there are quite a few, and it was quite an interesting year. But the record amount of helicopter releases we had during the month of December was absolutely fantastic. We had 4 or 5 helicopters. I think it was 5 helicopters released in a single month, which was more helicopters released in that month than we had ever before. On any given month. Even when FSX or any other sim was the king, we didn't have as many helicopters out there coming out. So it was really fantastic. I was really happy to see that happening. And of course, the fact that we heard that helicopters would be out in Microsoft Flight Simulator later this year. Those were the two big ones. I know that people are waiting for X-Plane 12. I'm waiting for X-Plane 12 as well, which also brings very cool stuff for helicopters. But of course, I'm not diminishing, I'm not reducing, I'm not saying that Laminar Research's efforts are not valid. They are pretty valid, and I am really eager and curious to see what X-Plane 12 it's putting on the table. But of course, I'm even more interested in finding out if Microsoft and Azobo are going to do a good job with helicopters. They seem to, it looks like they are doing a good job. But that's a doubt that I have. Yeah, it's not that I'm giving more importance to Microsoft Flight Simulator. The thing is, I know what X-Plane is capable of, and it's not going to be a big surprise for me if they do something really cool, because that's what I am expecting from them already. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with helicopters Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I think, yeah, in some ways, X-Plane 12 is kind of a known quantity, right? Like it is the follow-up to the previous version, and it just seems like, they are working on a whole bunch of different things with that sim, and it'll be, a little bit more in most or every respect. With Asobo and Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's we don't know exactly what they're capable of with helicopters, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting, right?
Yeah, well, with helicopters and everything else, we haven't seen the actual final product finished. Microsoft did a 10-year plan for Microsoft Flight Simulator, in
Right.
which they were going to add, or in which they are going to add features and content to it throughout the 10 years. We are in year 2, so we're just 20% into that plan that Microsoft has done. We don't know. We already know what they have done, but we also know that this is a very young product. It's not mature. So since it's not mature, we don't actually know exactly what is it that Microsoft and Azobo are able to do in the product as a whole, because we cannot judge them. We can judge them for some things that they have done so far, but we don't have the final product in our hands yet.
That's right.
Right. So, yeah, there are some issues. We cannot say that they are bad because there are some issues in the sim. They have done things that are really cool, and we cannot say that they are amazing because those things are really cool. We can only, in my opinion, we can only judge them when the product is done, or at least mature enough, so that just like with X-Plane, the thing that you were saying, just like with X-Plane, there's a time in which whatever comes into the sim is not going to be revolutionary, because the sim itself, it's revolutionary. Microsoft Flight Simulator was a complete revolution, and it's a very complex piece of software. And as complex and as amazing that it is, we'll still need to see how it will unfold in the future. Because remember, guys, everything that we see today may not be true in a year or 2. Again, because this is a product that is going to be unfolding throughout the next 8 years, right? So we'll have to wait a bit and see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the things that we've seen change in the last year and a half, and coming up on 2 years, but in the middle of this year, is fairly significant, and between content and core functionality, and yeah, there's a lot that's going to come from that. So I think it'll be it's going to be interesting to see it grow. And you know, I'm curious to see what your take on this is, but you know, I've seen some of the community are a bit oppositional. It's X-Plane versus Microsoft Flight Simulator, but in my mind, I you know, both of them are kind of complementary in many ways, and I get enjoyment from both sims, and I'm excited to see both of them do their various levels of evolution over the next, the next year, the next, 3-4 years. What's your take on that?
That's I'm laughing because if you have watched some of the 3 Grand Prix Simas episodes, we touch this now and then. We are very very critics when it comes to this. It's I don't think it makes any sense for people to start or try to engage in any sim wars. It doesn't make sense at all. It's just it's I would say it's a tribal thing, tribe A versus B, us versus them, which makes absolutely no sense. Microsoft Flight Simulator came out and people started to say that, oh, look, X-Plane is going to die. And now X-Plane 12 was announced. And, oh, look, there goes Microsoft Flight Simulator. Years ago, years ago it was the same. FSX was out and there goes X-Plane, which was, well, not as big as it is right now. But people still had these wars. And after that, it was X-Plane versus Prepared. And now it's Microsoft Flight Simulator versus X-Plane. But it doesn't, it doesn't matter which sim you use. There are a few. I have a few pet peeves, and this is one of them. Because here's the thing. Here's my theory, and I have a lot of theories. But here's my theory.
Yeah, fire away with
yours. Flight simulation is a very personal experience. Overall, we are all in it because we probably like aviation. Even if flight sims didn't exist, you and I would be probably looking up whenever we hear an aircraft or a helicopter or something that makes noise flying, right? We will still looking up because that's something that we like. So there is a base in that. There's something that there's common. It's common, the enjoyment for aviation, the love for aviation. And there's where the core passion comes from. But other than that, the actual hobby of flight simulation is something that it's very personal, because what you like to do, or what you want to do, what you want to take from a flight sim may be completely different from what I want to take from a flight sim. I fly helicopters. Some guys cannot even look at helicopters. They want to do airliners. They want to get into their FMCs and do all those things and blah, blah, blah. And take off and go to 5-digit altitude numbers and, get to the other airport and land and do 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours in autopilot. And they are happy with it. And that's perfectly normal. It's not what I want from a sim. Some guys want amazing graphics. Some guys want great flight dynamics. Some guys want both. Some guys want to fly the world. Some don't. Some want to blow up stuff like bridges in DCS. Like some guys in the community like to.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah, I think we all do. And some other guys don't want to do military stuff. For example, I don't do, or it's very rare for me to actually do any military missions in DCS. I fly helicopters in DCS, but I just fly around. I don't actually blow up stuff. Sure. I have done so, of course. I have tried the weapon systems and whatnot, and have had a great time flying the UE with 3 other friends and blowing some stuff up together. That was a lot of fun. But it's not what I take from Sims.
Right.
And what you take from Sims may be somewhere within this list that I just mentioned or not. Right. So the fact that I select a certain sim doesn't mean that you are going to select that the sim that I selected is the one that is better for you, because it may not be. If I use Explain as my main sim, and that is my main sim for a series of reasons, I have recently done a webinar in which I mentioned those reasons. I want to fly helicopters with good flight dynamics. I want to fly the world. I don't have the need for military stuff, and I want to use VR. Those are the three main things I would say that I look for in a sim. So because I want to fly the world, I don't use Aerofly FS2 or DCS that often, although I do have them installed. I have a lot of sims installed, all right? And I do use them now and then, but my main sim is X-Plane because of these reasons that I just mentioned. Could I use Microsoft Flight Simulator? I could with the helicopters that we have right now, but those helicopters are not what I am looking for. There are other models that I enjoy more, and those models are in X-Plane. Okay, so I think it's nonsense, and it's useless, and it's just poison for the community when people start these sim wars, because they are pointless. There's absolutely nothing good will come ever from any of these discussions. Can we discuss different points of views in the usage of sims? Can we discuss if I should use sim A or sim B? Yeah, we can, in a civil and polite way. Should we start a war because of it? Because I think that the sim that you use is wrong. Yeah, it is wrong for me. Perhaps. Maybe it's not. Perhaps you use the same sim that I do. But does it make it wrong does it make you wrong if you use a different sim from the sim that I use? It doesn't. Is it right for you? If it's right for you, and it's the right one, right? So it's completely, it's nonsense, and it's pointless, really. It's childish, even, I would say.
Yeah, it is, and it can be challenging to kind of sort of cut through some of it, and I think the point that you make, I think at the core of it is that you have certain requirements for your sim experience, and that's going to lead you to use one sim over more than another sim. But someone else can come to it and have a different set of expectations, and another sim is the right one for them, and that doesn't make either of those people wrong. It just they pick the sim that works best for them. So it's a curious thing, and I've watched it evolve. Although I think it's kind of it's calmed down. A lot of people have kind of they've determined whether the new kid on the block, the new Microsoft Flight Simulators is what they're looking for. And a lot of people, it certainly is. And for other people, X-Plane 11 and soon to be X-Plane 12 is likely where they're going to stay. And, there's fans of P3D and DCS and IL2 and all of those things that are out there. So, you just have to find the right sim for you.
Exactly. There's a lot of choices. Just, try to find out which one is the best for you. Yeah, and do ask away. But if you go to a group that is specific about a certain sim, you may have some biased answers. So just just
for sure. Yeah, that's true of any community that you wade into.
Yeah, so, exactly. Just the advice that I give anyone that's new or that's trying to get into flight simulators, it's either and this may sound like I'm really not a modest guy at all, but you could always ask me, because I am really I do have my preferences, but I will probably help you and guide you. When I say me and other community leaders such as yourself and guys from FS Lead, people that are in the community, serving the community and working for the community. They usually have a different perspective of things, and they usually tend to help based on what people need. Because when you very often see people asking, which sim should I use? And other guys, instead of asking, what is it that you want to do in the sims, they just start throwing the sims they use at the person. And guys that are usually in front of projects such as Stormbirds or helisimmer.com or FS Elite or any other one. I'm not mentioning these because they are the best. They are out there just like Threshold or any other websites. Ask the guys behind those projects because they usually have the tendency to try and help without the bias of using a SIM A or SIM B. Or just go to several, just do a list of SIMs, go to groups that use those SIMs and ask people why is it that they use those SIMs, or ask more specific questions. If you know what you're looking for in a SIM, ask if that SIM will help you do what you want to do. Gather as much information as you can, and then do your own educated choice and see how it goes for you. And please don't fill your SIM with add-ons before actually trying the SIM.
Yeah, that's right. Get used to the base core functionality, then you can expand outwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in addition to your list, I would throw in the Flight Sim Association, a little plug for the group there. And I know you've contributed some content. I've contributed some content there, and very much with the association in general is aimed at trying to help people find the right sim and the right sim content for them. So there's another little plug too.
That's an excellent starting point. Just start there and go in and then look for other options. But that's a good place to start. Thank you very much I didn't even remember that. Heaven is going to kick my ass.
Well, it's collective memory, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah, together we remember everything. So we've been talking about the community. We've been talking about 2021. Let's wrap up the last part of this podcast. Looking forward, and we've already talked a little bit about some of the things that we're looking forward to, but what's the thing that you're most looking forward to in 2022 in terms of flight sim, content, community, products, you name it.
Well, it has to be the fact that helicopters are coming into Microsoft Flight Simulator for all the reasons that we already pointed out here. It's not because I think Microsoft Flight Simulator is the best in the world. It may be for you. It may even be for me in the future. But it's just because I am really curious to see what's going to happen with that sim in regards with helicopters, and not just because of the flight dynamics, but also because of other things that the team has been talking about in the past. Some of them are public, some are not. I have an NDA with Microsoft, so I cannot talk about those, obviously. But there are a few that are public and that have been mentioned on some of the previous videos. For example, the team wants to do the same with helipads and heliports that they have done with airports and include them in the sim, which is obviously absolutely fantastic, especially if they manage to get the helipads on top of buildings, for example. I can imagine São Paulo in Brazil, which is the largest city in the world with the most helipads, or at least, if it's not the first, it's the second along with New York. But São Paulo has the biggest private fleet of helicopters in the world. So that's just absolutely fantastic and amazing. Of course, X-Plane 12 is coming our way, and I am really curious to see how is it that laminar research is going to, or what is it that laminar research is going to bring new to us. I've seen some pretty cool stuff. We all seen some pretty cool stuff, and then some pretty dev blogs coming from Ben and Austin and the rest of the team about the new stuff that's coming. And it's not just about those little things, inner things that they love to talk about, the workflows or the engines or stuff like that. There are also something, especially I'm very curious about the water that we have seen some time ago, and we don't know anything else about it, or we haven't heard anything about it for some time. I hope they finally bring movable, landable surfaces. If you remember, we do have frigates, and we do have an aircraft carrier, but they are hard coded. You cannot make landable ships, for example, inside X-Plane because unless you start tweaking or you start working with add-ons and plugins and whatnot, which makes it a little harder to do. I hope that they eventually add some native support for that as well. But in a nutshell, what I'm looking for and what I'm looking forward is, of course, helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I want to hear your choices. What is it that you're looking forward in 2022?
Well, I'll start with a helicopter, seeing as we've been talking about those so much. DCS and the AH-64D, delayed a little bit, but coming out sometime in the next, month or two, and coming to early access. And I think this is going to be a big moment. I mean, there's a lot of Apache AH-64 fans. That come from previous sims, and I think this is going to be a big moment for DCS. So I'm excited about that, and I'm really looking forward to flying it because I have been doing more helicopter flying in the last couple of years, and
good.
And I'm getting into it. It's a slow process, but I'm getting into it, and it just that helicopter ticks a lot of boxes, so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited to see what Microsoft Flight Simulator can do with helicopters, and I'm also especially after the last Q&A that they had, I'm very excited about kind of the knock-on effect that it's having, because they're having to do more work programming the aerodynamic system, and they release some really cool visualizations of what the prop wash does and some of the dynamic effects that they've been having to put into the sim because they're bringing helicopters to the sim. So, whether you're a helicopter fan or you fly other aircraft, everybody's going to benefit from that sim going, and diving deeper into the flight dynamics there. So, there's two big things. There's a lot that's coming this year. I mean, the IL2 series is going to be finishing up their Normandy release, and then we'll see what they're going to do next. And of course, there's a lot of add-ons coming for Microsoft Flight Simulator and for X-Plane 11 and 12 that I'm excited about. Aerobask's Falcon 8X, that's going to be an exciting moment. There's a lot that's happened, and that is happening, and that will be coming out in this year. So there's a lot.
There's a lot of cool stuff, and I'm hoping that 2022 is also the year that the Kiowa comes out.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been waiting for that one even more. I have to be honest with you. I do love the Apache. I've played the Apache for hours and hours in James Longbow and other sims.
Yep.
But the Kiowa, for some reason, it does. I have a very soft spot for the Kiowa and the kind of mission that helicopter previously they were still doing in some countries, but previously did for the United States. And I am dying to get my hands on it and start flying it around. I like the kind of mission. I like the fact that it's not as an automated machine as the Apache is. The Apache is really amazing. I'm going to love to fly it. But Kiowa is something that I'm really, really hoping that Polychop manages to get out there for us to finally fly it. So that's going to be interesting as well. And you were mentioning the Microsoft Flight Simulator thing, the visualization of the airflow. Mm-hmm. Wasn't that amazing? Wasn't that incredible? I was just stunned when I saw it. I felt the same thing when I saw that I felt when I saw Microsoft Flight Simulator for the first time in 2019 on the global preview event where we met the team and they have shown us what they were doing. And they had the same kind of visualization. I was like, "Oh man, Jesus, this is really nice." And it was the same on this video. And I'm excited. I'm really excited, but also very curious because I'm a developer, and I know that sometimes you have very good ideas and a very good prototypes that eventually you have to start getting down on features and doing something that you didn't initially planned, and it's not as good as you initially planned because of those issues. I am hoping that those issues don't pop up, and I am hoping that Azobo does a good job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, it certainly looks encouraging, and it's an exciting moment for that sim potentially to bring some of these new dynamics in place that will, help with helicopters and other aircraft. And yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's good things there, and that 10-year plan that you referenced. Yeah, I think there's a lot of places that it can continue to evolve in, and that gives me a lot of hope for, where it's going to go. So
yeah, but here's something nice, and here's something cool that people sometimes tend to forget. Um, Even if it doesn't, and I hope it does, I really hope it does. But even if Microsoft Flight Simulator fails for some reason, and we're talking about an hypothetical catastrophic thing that would happen for it to have,
sure.
It's just that. But even if it failed, there are other sims in the market.
Yep.
If Microsoft, it's something that people forget, and they start getting into those sim wars, and above all, they start bashing Microsoft and Azobo because, oh, my sim is ruined. Yeah, I know that you guys want to use Microsoft Flight Simulator. But the truth is, if Microsoft had never announced and never released Microsoft Flight Simulator, what would any of us be doing right now? We would be flying those other sims, right?
That's right.
So it's not, again, not devaluing Azobo's and Microsoft's work. I'm not using Microsoft Flight Simulator as much as I would like because there are some cool helicopters out there, but I just feel that they are not there yet, with some
Sure.
exceptions being, and I have to say, the high performance group H145 is really getting really good over time. And I hope they continue to work and they evolve the flight dynamics a bit more. But it's probably one of the best, if not. I wouldn't say it's the best because it wouldn't be fair for flying side. It's a completely different helicopter, Bell 47, that they have released. So we have at least a couple of amazing helicopters for Microsoft Flight Simulator. But for me, it's not there yet. So guys, even if Microsoft Flight Simulator is not working for you, we have other sims. You probably have other sims installed. A lot of you certainly didn't come or certainly didn't start using sims in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Just breathe and just, and go use something that really ticks your boxes. That's what we all need to have fun in a sim.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we can try and wrap this up. Some final comments. Maybe let's a message to people who've never flown a helicopter in a sim before. Any words of encouragement?
For people that want to fly helicopters, any words of encouragement?
But they should watch your webinar. That's
they should.
I'm going to throw that in the description. So they should watch your webinar. That's something.
Yeah, they should watch the webinar. They should check out our How to Fly Helicopters section. They should reach out to us in our Facebook group because we have a lot of people. We have a fantastic community with people very much willing to help. Words of encouragement, just know this. Helicopters are really, really, really hard. They are some very nasty pieces of machines that want to kill you, your family, your neighbors, and the rest of the people in your city, if they can. So if you are struggling with flying helicopters, that's perfectly normal. Just know this. Every single simmer out there that flies helicopters half decently, they have been there. They have been in your shoes. So we have a community of people that knows exactly what you are going through. And we know exactly how you feel and how frustrating it is to try and do something and things just don't work the way that you want to or the way that you expect it to. Don't give up. Practice, practice, practice. ask for opinions. Check out your hardware, check your software, check the webinar that I have done a few days ago, and go through all that. I cover hardware, software, that all plays. Here's the thing, it's very good software and hardware and skills and practice sessions and a structured way of learning is very important on any sim, and it is, or any type of aircraft, but it is especially important for helicopters for a series of reasons that you'll see in the video. So if you are struggling with flying helicopters, it may not be you. It may be the software that you're using. It may be the hardware that you're using. It may be how you have your hardware set up. It may be so many things that eventually you think it's you that cannot use or fly helicopters when it's not. It's something else. Just don't lose your hope.
Yeah, I would echo that. Keep at it. And, I've certainly, struggled quite a bit with helicopters. And, I've said some choice words at times because it wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. But you do get there. So, yeah, keep at it.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for those that have been listening. Sorry about my ramblings. I ramble a lot. I warned you, Colin, at the beginning that I tend to talk a bit too much sometimes, perhaps. But I had serious fun talking with you and talking to our audience. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for listening, guys. If you want to read some very exciting news about pretty much warbirds and DCS and all that stuff, you know where to go. Stormbirds is the place, guys. Go visit Stormbirds and just get those juicy, amazing news that Colin writes. It's just it's one of the websites that I visit pretty much. I wouldn't say every day, but at least every couple of days I visit it, and I keep close tabs on your Twitter account as well, so I don't miss anything.
Well, I will return the favor, and Sergio, thank you very much for being on the podcast here, and for all the work that you do in the flight sim community. Listeners should definitely hit helisimmer.com in their web browser and check it out. And get involved with some helicopter flight simulation. So, Sergio, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. And with that, we end episode 5 of the Stormbirds Podcast. Thank you very much for listening and have a great night.